Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Chair of Rochford District Council, Councillor Sarah Jane Page, the Vice Chair of the Council, Councillor Joe McPherson, the Chief Executive, Jonathan Stevenson, and the Reverend Glenn Mansfield.
Members, please be seated.
Good evening. Could I ask everyone to note the safety instructions? There is no fire drills planned for this evening. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit and make your way to the assembly point located in the Market car park. Adjacent to the Civic Suite building. I would also like to remind you to please switch off your mobile phones or turn them to silent. Please note that the meeting will be live streamed, where the proceedings are capable of repeat viewing. Members of the public can record this meeting, providing this does not disturb the meeting, and can be done from the seats reserved for this purpose. Therefore, please raise your hand clearly if you intend to take photographs or film this evening. No one's indicating, thank you. Please ensure you speak clearly into the microphone and ensure you switch off your microphone when you have finished speaking. If you are seated in the public area of the chamber, it is likely that your image will be captured by the recording cameras and result in your image being part of the broadcast. Finally, if members for any reason are not present for the whole debate on an item, you should consider and seek advice as necessary on whether it would be appropriate for you to vote on that item. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, please will you stand with me for the Reverend Glenn Mansfield to say prayers.
Well, good evening to you all. It's good to see you again. I understand there's been a referendum on the Lord's Prayer and you prefer the traditional version. So tonight I will pray the traditional version. For those of you that know the words, please feel free to join in. So some words, first of all, from the book of Proverbs. Blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding. For wisdom is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. Wisdom is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, in her left hand are riches and honour. Her ways are pleasant, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold fast will be blessed. Very much the scriptures are clear that the pathway to prosperity is through wisdom. And as you consider budgets this evening, one of the most important things obviously is the wise use of money. So that's what I'm going to pray for this evening. So let's pray. So, Father, we thank you for the ability to produce wealth that you give us. Thank you for the financial resources available in this area. And we pray that you'd grant the council wisdom in their decision-making and their use of money. And so the Lord's Prayer, join in if you wish. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Have a blessed meeting.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome to stay, but it might be a fairly long meeting, so it's entirely up to you. Thank you. Members, please be seated. So moving on to item 1, apologies for absence. I've received apologies for Councillor Ian Wilson and Councillor Mrs. Vilma Wilson. Is there any other apologies? Thank you. Item 2, the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of January 2025. Are these minutes agreed, members? Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. The monitoring officer has granted a dispensation to all members any business of the authority where the business relates to the functions of the authority in respect of housing where you're a tenant or your authority, provided that those functions do not relate particularly to your tenancy or lease, and setting council tax or a precept under the Local Government Finance Act 1992. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. Non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council and also Barling Magna Parish Council.
Okay, and Councillor Lorraine Shaw.
Thank you. Same as Councillor Steptoe, non-pecuniary interest as Essex County Councillor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ian Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As a member of Rayleigh Town Council.
Thank you. Sorry, members, please bear with me. So I've just taken advice for those members here that are also members of Rayleigh Town Council, Rayleigh Town and Parish Council, because of the precept here. So we could just make a comment, couldn't we? Could you come in with that, please?
Yes, Chairman, I think Councillor Ward makes it with regards to the precept and the references within there. Obviously, a number of members are town and parish councils. Town and parish councillors, obviously the safest course is to do, but I suggest if members are happy that we record in the minutes that there are a number of members that are also members of town and parish councils, and that was acknowledged at the meeting, and also that there's a number of Essex County councillors as well, and that interest that's been applied also refers to them. If members are happy with that, then that would be satisfactory.
We're all happy with that, please? Thank you very much.
Does that qualify with regard to the question I'm going to ask?
You've obviously declared a specific interest, which I think is appropriate, and we'll record that specific interest which you've mentioned.
So we're going to move on now to item 4 on your agendas, which are announcements from various leaders and chairs, and I will start with mine. Thank you. Good evening, members. Since our last full council meeting, I've had the privilege of attending a variety of events across our district, each one a testament to the vibrant community spirit that makes Rochford District so special. One of the most moving moments was the Holocaust Memorial Day service at Mill Hall on the 24th of January. It was an honour, yet deeply humbling, to host this event alongside my chaplain, Glenn Mansfield. The service was beautifully supported by the Deputy Lieutenant, Julie Fosh, Essex mayors, chairs, councillors from our parishes, MPs and district councillors from Rochford District Residents, Independents and Liberal Democrat Group, students from our secondary schools and members of our vibrant community, all coming together in a solemn act of remembrance. After the service, we lit candles and laid flowers at the memorial for victims of persecution, reflecting on the past and reaffirming our commitment to peace and unity. Continuing with celebrations of culture and heritage, my consort and I were delighted to attend a Burns luncheon at Pine Tree Care Home in Rayleigh. It was a joy to meet the residents and witness the dedication of the incredible staff. I had the pleasure of delivering the opening speech, honouring the legacy of great Robert Burns, whose words of kingship and humanity still resonate so powerfully today. I was also delighted to attend the opening event of King Edmund School's Creative Arts exhibition at the Forum in Southend. This exhibition showcases the incredible talents of the King Edward School students across all year groups and I highly encourage everyone to visit. It will be open for the next month and is truly worth seeing. Strengthening relationships between our district and parish councillors remain a key priority, and in this spirit we have attended 4 council meetings in Ashenden and Canewdon, with more visits planned in the coming weeks. The warm welcome we received reaffirmed my belief that bridging the gap between district and parish council benefits the entire community, especially civically, fostering stronger connections and shared ambitions for the future. On the weekend of the 8th and 9th of February, I had the pleasure of attending Seed Potato Day, organised by Trust Links in partnership with South East Essex Organic Gardeners. It was inspiring to meet such passionate individuals dedicated to sustainable gardening, allotments and environmental stewardship. The following day, I proudly supported Feel the Love by Make Your Market in Rochford, hosted by the lovely James Edmonds, an event that shines as a well-deserved spotlight on small businesses, emerging entrepreneurs and local performing talents. February also saw the prestigious Rochford District Business Awards, which I had the honour of opening on the 13th of February. These awards celebrated the innovation, resilience and contributions of our local businesses, the very heartbeat of our economy. It was truly uplifting to witness the dedication and entrepreneurial spirit of those who helped drive our district forward, and so important that we as a council celebrate and support our amazing business communities. I had the absolute pleasure of cutting the ribbon at the grand opening of the new Chichester Hotel in Wickford, which in the past was very well supported in our community, but also has a very historic history dating back to the 13th century. The new owners have refurbished this venue and will undoubtedly contribute to the economic prosperity of the area, providing a beautiful space for gatherings, celebrations, weddings and business opportunities. A particularly heartwarming experience was welcoming a couple of groups of bright young students from Plumborough Primary Academy School and St Nicholas School to the Civic Suite Council Chamber here. They met me with myself, Councillor Linden, Councillor Lambourne, Councillor Stanley, eagerly asking questions about the workings of the council. This was the first of many school visits planned for this spring, and it was a delight to see their enthusiasm. We even turned on the AV system and had the children stand at the microphones to ask their questions, an experience they truly loved and adored. I conducted the sessions in a light-hearted manner, addressing the councillors just as I would in a formal meeting, much to the children's amusement and delight. Moments like these remind us of the importance of engaging young minds in local democracy and maybe encouraging them to be our future councillors. And finally, before I close, may I take this opportunity to remind you that nominations for the Citizen of the Year Awards are still open. This is a wonderful chance to recognise those unsung heroes within our district, people who go above and beyond, often without expectation of reward, simply to make our community a better place. I encourage you all to spread the word and to take a moment to nominate those deserving individuals. The deadline for nominations is this Friday, the 21st of February, and the awards will be presented at my civic dinner on the 28th of March at the Mill Arts and Events Centre. Tickets are still available. I do hope to see many of you there for what promises to be a very special evening of celebration, recognition and special performances from the local community. Please can I also ask you for any donations of raffle prizes or auction prizes. These can be brought to the Mill Arts and Events Centre, the RDC Hub at Rochford Library, or please bring them to the next full council meeting on the 18th of March. Equally, if you cannot attend the dinner, please can I ask you to make a donation via my civic officer for these amazing local charities. I look forward to attending many more events in the coming months and to meeting even more the wonderful residents, community groups, schools and businesses that make our district truly very special. Thank you very much indeed. So moving on, I'm going to ask the leader of the council if he would like to give any announcements. Thank you. And the chair of the Policy and Service Committee. Bless you. Councillor Lisa Newport.
For communities. Thank you, Chair. It's just a quick announcement. Members will be aware of the news from the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner regarding that the shortfall in the PFCC budget for 25-26, which could necessitate making difficult decisions, including the loss of all PCSOs in Essex. This, I know, was a concern for councillors and our communities. PCSOs are the eyes and the ears in our community and engage with residents, as well as gather information and intelligence and contribute to making our residents feel safer. I am pleased to announce that the Chief Executive has received a letter from the PFCC to confirm that the government has provided additional funding following concerns being raised from police forces across the UK. Following a meeting of the Essex Police, Fire and Crime Panel, it was agreed the new precept increases, and combined with the additional 2.3 million provided by government, all PCSOs will be retained. This is good news for Rochford and for our residents, and a copy of this letter was sent to all members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The Chairman of Audit and Governance, which is Councillor Bob Milne, would you like to make an announcement?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank the members of the One team, actually, for their maintenance of the accounts of this council that's enabled the accurate estimation of the budget that we're going to discuss tonight and the council tax, and also the fact that I'm looking forward this week to receiving the statement of accounts for 23-24 at the Audit Committee, and of course the Treasury management by the team has actually earned us good returns on interest and so on, because we are a solvent council, and they've done rather well. And this year we're looking forward to meeting the deadline date for the delivery of the audit report of the council. And I just want to thank the team. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to invite the Head of Paid Services, Jonathan Stevenson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just one announcement. I'd like to make an announcement with regards to the attendance of the 2025 Royal Garden Party by Rochester District Councillor. Following the ballots, I confirm the successful member drawn by myself and will be attending this year's Royal Garden Party is Councillor Daniel Efty. All unsuccessful members will be placed into the ballot for next year's Royal Garden Party. I've informed Councillor Daniel Efty as the application needs to be completed this week, and the Palace notified of the representation from Rochester District Council. Thank you.
I've already done it.
Thank you very much. Moving now, members, on to item 5, public and member questions. Members, we have received 2 questions from the members of the public, which are set out on page 5.1 of the electronic agenda, and which you have all been circulated. I'm now going to, so the first question is from Denise Crosby, Chairman of Rochford Residents Steering Group, and this question is directed at Councillor James Newport, the leader of the council. May I invite Denise Crosby to come and sit here, please?
Good evening, councillors. My name is Denise Crosby and I'm chair of the Rochford Residents Steering Group. I'm asking this question on their behalf. It is understood that the Freight House is to be opened on a short-term basis. What is your definition of reopening the Freight House on a short-term basis, and how long is that period of time?
Thank you. Councillor Newport, James Newport, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mrs. Crosby, for your question, and it's nice to see you again. The council is currently undertaking a feasibility study for the Freight House to look at creating a deliverable and financially sustainable vision for the future regeneration and development of the heritage asset, the Freight House and the surrounding area. At the next Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee on the 25th of March, this committee will consider a report regarding the reopening of the Freight House for meanwhile use whilst the feasibility study is undertaken. The meanwhile use is for the main hall only and would require a third-party operator to operate and manage this facility. The council is currently seeking interested organisations to register their interest in operating events from this facility. This stage closes on Sunday the 2nd of March. The committee will consider the registered operator interest alongside the costs of reopening, whilst acknowledging the timeline for the future regeneration. The period of time the meanwhile use can operate is still to be determined, and the council will continue to provide updates to stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newport. Denise Crosbie, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, please. So really you don't have an answer as to how long the short term is going to be. So surely that's now going to put it into devolution. So how are we going to safeguard the opening of the building in long term for the community?
Councillor Newport, do you want to respond?
So in terms of devolution or local government reorganisation, this council is aware of that, and we will be looking at all the options around assets during our work around local government reorganisation.
Thank you. Denise Crosbie, would you like to take your seat back in the audience? Thank you. So I have a question too here, but unfortunately Mr. Steve May hasn't arrived at the meeting, so what I will ask is for a reply to his question to be sent to him through the officers. Thank you. Moving on now to members' questions. Members, we've received one question from the members of the council, which is set out on page 5.1 of the agenda. This question is from Councillor Mike Steptoe and will be responded to by Councillor James Newport. Councillor Steptoe, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My question is to the Leader of the Council. During the 2022-2023 council year, it was agreed by full Rochford District Council at a full Rochford District Council meeting that the land, park, play space known locally as the Parry in Little Wakering Road, Little Wakering, to be leased to Barling Magna Parish Council. The Barling Magna Parish Council is still waiting for the agreed signed lease to be returned. A number of requests have been made to RDC to action this, but is still waiting. Would the Leader please explain why there has been such a long delay in returning the lease and advice when Barling Magna Parish Council will receive the signed copy?
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Councillor James Newport, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Steptoe, for your question. I'm told by officers there's been ongoing correspondence between the parties and further updates to the draft lease, which is now with the Parish Council for review. The parish have informed the council that they will be contacting a solicitor this week with a view of concluding the lease. We hope to be in a position to complete very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steptoe, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It is interesting to note that to get some action happening here, I've had to resort to this particular method, and it's the third time I've had to do it. So can the Leader please explain why, despite having made many requests over a long period of time to get this action, nothing seemed to have happened until I put this question in?
Thank you. Councillor James Newport.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, this is the first time that since I've been leader that Councillor Steptoe has brought this to my attention. And if he hadn't had a response before, he could have, I've been leader since May, he could have brought this to my attention way before now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newport. So, members, we're moving on to item 6, which is the 2025-26 budget and the 2025 to 2030 medium-term financial strategy. The report begins on page 6.1 of the agenda. Can I firstly set out the procedure I plan to follow this evening for this item? I will invite Councillor James Newport, Chairman of Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee, to present the report. I understand that Councillor Newport wishes to use some slides to assist in presenting details of the presented budget. I intend to allow Councillor James Newport some leeway in the time limit for his speech due to the extensive nature of the item, and will extend the same courtesy to all other group leaders when speaking on the main budget report. Excuse me. I will allow some members to speak on the main budget report before we then turn attention to the amendment submitted by Councillor Daniel Belton. I will ask Councillor James Newport to respond to any questions at the end of a member's speech. There will be no right for a member to come back again following the response. I will invite Councillor Belton to introduce her amendment and allow 5 minutes for this, and will then open up for debate before moving to the vote. We will vote on the amendments separately. We will then return to the substantive budget before us for any further debate. We will vote on the recommendations in the report separately and take a recorded vote on recommendation 4 as required by relevant regulations. Recommendations 5 and 6 are just for noting, and so we won't take a vote on these. May I now invite Councillor James Newport, the Leader of the Council and Chairman of Strategy and Finance and Policy Committee, to introduce the report and move the recommendations, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to start this evening by thanking David Dickinson and his team for producing this budget, and I don't think without David's expertise we'd have got where we are today. And I also recognising that he has the same to do with our partners in Brentwood. So David's got a very busy time of year. I'd also like to thank all the members of the Strategy and Finance and Policy Committee also, Madam Chair, where the budget's already had a good, robust debate and lots of questions answered by David. So thank you, members. As we set out tonight's budget, we do so with a firm commitment to the values that guide our decisions. Value for money, social value, people, climate and inclusivity. Every penny we spend must deliver the best possible outcomes for our residents. That's why value for money is at the heart of this budget. Not just balance in the books, but ensuring efficiency, accountability, and investment in services that make a real difference to the everyday lives of our residents. Beyond the firm commitment to financial responsibility, we are focused on social value, making decisions that strengthen our local economy, support community well-being, and deliver long-term benefits for residents and businesses alike. Of course, at the centre of this budget are our people, ensuring that essential services remain strong, opportunities are created, and no one is left behind. We also recognise that tackling the climate crisis must be a priority in everything we do. This budget reflects our commitment to sustainability, from reducing carbon emissions to protecting our natural environment for future generations. And underpinning it all is inclusivity. Today, we are setting out a budget that must work for everyone, ensuring fairness, opportunity, and support for those who need it most. We are committed to breaking down the barriers and ensuring that our community thrives together. With these principles at our core, this budget is not just about numbers, it's about building a fairer, greener and more resilient future for all. We should remember all that we have achieved since May through careful financial planning. We have been able to step in to support over 100 of our most vulnerable residents when the Labour government withdrew the winter fuel payment. A full audit of our accounts for 2023-24 have been completed, providing assurance to our residents of our prudent financial management. Careful management and investment of cash has provided a significant return from Treasury management, of over 1.3 million, significantly outperforming the budget by 734,000. We've also reviewed all properties classed as second homes for council tax purposes in preparation of the introduction of the second homes premium. Our investment in the new AV equipment for our council chamber has provided an even more open and transparent council and has ongoing revenue savings of 70,000, and I'm excited about the progress we're making with our assets. In light of this and planned local government reorganisation, which is later covered on the agenda, and which members will recognise that could impact on proposals for the new council headquarters, I would like to make the capital budget allocation currently designated to HQ relocation to be broader, to support other emerging asset development work and proposals, and as such change this to assets and investment reserve. I trust there will be general consensus for this alteration across the chamber. We are commissioning a feasibility study for Freight House and the surrounding public realm, seeking to explore an ambitious regeneration scheme which will bring much footfall and much needed inward investment into the wider town centre. I'm passionate about developing new activities and initiatives which can support the vibrancy and economic viability of our town centres. In addition, at the March Strategy, Finance and Policy meeting, we'll be bringing back the report to support the investment of around £90,000 needed for meanwhile use, identified within the Rochford District Cultural and Visitor Economy Strategy 2025-2030 from the Assets and Investments Capital Budget. This will be closely followed by a sustainable business case for Freight House for consideration by the Strategy, Finance and Policy, with a further estimated 500,000 capital expenditure from the Assets and Investment Capital Budget. I also anticipate this allocation being used to support the marketing activity as referenced in the Conservative Group's amendment, which would be funded by reducing the revenue contribution to the investment reserve. There is much work to do, though, as we move into the next municipal year, as we look to make long overdue investment into the Mill Hall to carry out roof works, including solar PV, replacing the air handling units, windows and doors, to reduce the carbon output and drive down the revenue costs, and to deliver a preferred operating model decision in the new year on Mill Hall Arts and Event Centre. We will bring back the asset management strategy to adopt, which will drive asset optimisation and make use of some of our currently underutilised assets. When referring to the council, a resident said that they would wish we would just get on with the job. Well, tonight we are presenting a budget to do just that. Madam Chair, if we could take a closer look at the budget, and I thought it would be helpful to run through a few slides to provide clarity for members on the budget before you this evening. So members, if you could just turn your attention to the screens, and we've only got about 50 slides to go through, so I'll try and be quick. No, it's 11 slides, so bear with me. So the financial pressures that face local government have continued for 2025, with district and borough councils particularly impacted. Rochford's core spending power is flat for 2025 and includes an assumption that the council tax will increase by 2.99%. Demand on our services is driven by a growing and changing population. Rochford's population is growing and the proportion aged over 65 is also growing. Despite these pressures, the council remains committed to both the maintenance of service delivery and continuing to improve community outcomes that enhance the quality of life for residents of Rochford. Extend the producer responsibility of 829,000 is a new funding stream. This has helped improve the overall funding, but there is also a national insurance pressure of £160,000. The financial settlement, again, disappointingly, was a one-year settlement, not reflecting the full MTFS period and making budget setting and planning difficult. We may potentially see a multi-year settlement from 2026-27. Devolution and local government reform has not been factored into the budget, but will impact over the MTFS period. So devolution and local government reform within Essex has progressed over the past few weeks. Greater Essex has been selected to join the devolution priority programme. The 2025 budget and 2025-30 MTFS has been set without consideration of the impact of devolution or LGR. 1.5 million has been included in the capital programme for HQ relocation, and it was important to include the 1.5 million to ensure funds were available for office relocation, as the launchpad is only leased for 2 years. Although the impact of devolution and LGR is still unclear, the 1.5 HQ relocation budget will be reallocated to cover more generally assets and investments. This would allow the budget to be available to fund capital expenditure proposals that will result for completion of the revised asset strategy. The 1.5 million will therefore be available to fund the freight house costs identified as part of the Rochford District Cultural and Visitor Economy Strategy 2025-30. So if we could just turn to the general fund revenue, outturn and 25-26 budget. For 2024-25, the forecast is for a 1.37 million underspend as at Q3. Although the council is forecasting an underspend, 1.49 is forecast to be used from reserves to fund some in-year pressures. For 25-26, a break-even budget can be set, although there are pressures in subsequent years that will need to be addressed. A prudent approach to setting the budget has been used, including inflation assumed at 2% to reflect the Bank of England inflation target. Most grants have been assumed as not increasing over MTFS period. EPR assumed to reduce by 10% over the MTFS period to reflect a reduction in packaging. From 2026-27, council tax is assumed to increase by 2%, with the council tax base increasing by 0.5%. Business rates base for 25-26 as per previous budget, with a subsequent 2% increase per year. A review of business rates will be carried out in 25-26 to take into account the business rates reset schedule for 26-27, but also to be better focused on the growth within the district. You'll forgive the word borough there, members, that should be district, and a minimum level of general fund balance reserve held above 10% of the net budget requirement. If we could just move on to the Council's corporate plan for 24-28. On 17th of September 24, Council agreed a revised corporate plan for 24-28. The corporate plan provides a strategic overview of the Council's key areas of focus across the 3 pillars, providing good quality services to residents and businesses, strategic priorities and ambitions to enhance the district and the lives of our residents, and being a forward-thinking and well-managed authority. The budget MTFS includes growth items, has been prepared with the corporate plan strategic themes in mind. Places and spaces, a diverse and sustainable environment that enables everyone to live life to the full. Communities and homes, thriving and resilient communities that feel safe, supported and engaged. Economy and prosperity, an inclusive economy that delivers inward investment to support the growth of businesses, jobs and tourism, and a forward-thinking and well-managed authority committed to good governance, being fit for the future. So the key revenue growth items: £629,000 of revenue investment items, including one-off costs for 25-26, which include £145,000 to increase capacity within IT and legal services, £105,000 for assets surveys and feasibility studies on the council's assets, including leisure. 68,000 to support the delivery of economic growth priorities. 68,000 to support the delivery of an up-to-date local plan. 39,000 for development management to reduce the reliance on consultants. 36,000 to support the district to achieve net zero by 2050. 35,000 one-off cost to scan building control records, and 133,000 on training, Section 106 and IT software. And in the general fund capital, in the proposed MTFS strategy, includes a 5-year investment programme that supports the whole district, including further investment in Mill Arts and Event Centre. Other investments planned over the next 5 years include $1 million towards play equipment replacement across the whole district, 780,000 investment to improve the council's leisure facilities, 298,000 for the replacement of vehicles, 250,000 on IT improvements, 211 for the Rayleigh Windmill works and other works, 110,000 for street lighting, and 100,000 for heritage and cultural asset works. On our asset management strategy, the council currently has 148 land and property assets, excluding the car parks and trust properties. The total portfolio at the moment generates approximately 85,000 per annum. 7 of these assets, or 20% of the lease portfolio, generates 82% of the total income. 16 of these assets, 44% of the lease portfolio, are let to either a town council or parish council. 26 of those assets, 72% of the lease portfolio, generate less than £2,000 per annum. Therefore, a task and finish group has been set up to consider key points across the current portfolio: income versus non-income, genre of rating, assets, costs of managing the portfolio, opportunities for the portfolio, to identify significant investment required, including decarbonisation, identifying the purpose for holding the portfolio, understanding grant funding opportunities, considering how the portfolio can generate income or create savings, balancing a portfolio between delivering community benefit and seeking commercial return. The council is faced with an ever-increasing challenge of reduced funding, increasing operational costs and carbon zero targets, all of which render existing assets more challenging to run efficiently. Therefore, the principles of the new asset management strategy will be presented to the committee in March 2025, based on recommendations for the task and finish group, so the council can determine the right portfolio needed for its community. So members, if we could go to the Mill Hall Arts and Event Centre. The Mill Hall Arts and Event Centre was operational from September 2022. Following the interim arrangement to reopen the bar with a third party, the council has seen an ever-increasing events booking. For 2024-25, the Mill Hall Arts and Event Centre is expected to operate at a deficit of 230,000 against a budget of 309,600. The council has invested 424,000 of capital into the building since reopening, and the council plans to complete the following works by the end of the new financial year 25-26, which will include a new roof and installation of solar PV, replacement of air handling units for heating, ventilation and AC, replacement of the doors and windows, cafe canopy replacement, main hall acoustic panelling and ceiling tiles, and outer terrace works. This work will be funded by the slippage of the 2024-25 capital programme and the 25-26 budget, which totals around 1.2 million. These capital works will invest the life of the building so it can operate under the preferred operating model that will be presented to members in early summer. The Freight House, 25,000 is to be allocated from corporate priorities in 24-25 to fund a feasibility study for the Freight House, and the Rochford District Cultural and Visitor Economy Strategy 2025-2030, approved on the 12th of December 2024, following extensive consultation. The Freight House requires a need to develop and test options for the site to ensure it meets the needs of local communities. The headquarters relocation budget of 1.5 million relocated to asset and investments can be used to fund the key actions from the strategy. The proposed partial reopening of Freight House to be presented to Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee on the 25th of March 2025. So, members, it's an improved position, but uncertainty remains. 2025-26 budget and 2025-30 MTFS shows an improved position, but challenges remain. Council tax increase of 2.95%. Some revenue and capital items have been agreed, including a number of one-off costs based on key corporate priorities. Although 2025-26 is a balanced budget, there are deficits in subsequent years that need to be addressed, and the proposed reallocation of 1.5 for HQ relocation to assets and investments is a significant change and will allow funding to be available for the asset strategy. So in summary, 2025 budget is balanced. The pressures remain for subsequent years, but confident that these deficits can be met. The Council intends to manage the increasing costs of delivering vital services and be prepared for any external financial pressures, while still being able to invest, maintain and develop services over the coming year and beyond. To maintain and invest in vital services, the proposal is to increase the Rochford District Council element of council tax by 2.95% for 25-26, which will mean a Band D property increase by 14.73 pence per week, or £7.66 per annum, increase largely in line with boroughs and district councils across Essex. Financially, the council is in a good place, where we are looking to set a balanced budget that requires no borrowing. Whilst this is a great position to be in, it doesn't just happen by accident, and what is we are planned and prepared for. So, Madam Chair, if I could propose that I'd like to move the recommendations on page 6.1 of the report, R1 to R8. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor James Newport. Councillor Michael Hoy, I understand you'd like to second this motion.
Yes, I'll second that motion and I'll reserve my right to speak later. Thank you.
Thank you. So, members, as discussed, I'm going to open that for debate. Anyone that would like to... I was going to suggest group leaders come first. I'll invite a few other members to come forward, and then we'll move to the amendment. And then everybody, after Councillor Belton's pushed amendment forward, we will then go to debate on the amendment. Okay? So anyone that would like to speak, starting with the group leaders? Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Bear with me, there was quite a lot to digest there, but I definitely won't take the full 20 minutes. Right, firstly, it's reassuring to hear that people are at the centre of the budget, but it does feel like that means our people's money are at the centre and how much we can get out of them, looking at some of the proposals this evening, and I will give some examples of what I mean by that. Councillor Newport celebrated the financial windfalls of this year, along with sound financial management, something he inherited from previous Conservative administrations. It's therefore surprising that we need to increase council tax and fees and charges right across the board. And I'll come back to that at the end of my speech. But fees and charges I'd like to speak to initially. We're increasing parking again to raise £24,000 for this council, despite the fact that this council has a pot of money called £90,000 for priorities. A priority for this council should be keeping as much money in our residents' pockets as possible to help our businesses, to help our high streets and to help our individuals. I've made this point at committee, but it fell on deaf ears, but I'm making it again because I feel passionately about it. Football pitches, they've been increased. They were increased last year to bring in more revenue and to change how pitches were booked. Our revenue decreased last year, and the clubs that use our pitches dropped from 8 clubs to 4 clubs.
and yet we're still putting pitches up again. We are not encouraging people to use our open spaces, and that is something that speaks against what Councillor Newport spoke about in his opening speech. Now, it is pleasing to hear that Councillor Newport has already supported a number of the amendments that are going to be put forward shortly, despite them not being in the initial published budget. I'll be cynical, but I can't help but think we aired some of those on. Now, it is concerning to hear that 2 years on, we are still looking at an operating model for the Mill Hall, despite this being a passion of the administration. Maybe the administration could use their own catchphrase and get on with it. Will we be waiting in 2 years' time for a similar model for Freight House, by which time another group of less local people could be making the decisions as we move down local government reform and devolution as a likelihood? Now, I would be asking, because of the change and the things that have come forward from Councillor Newport that do affect my amendment, when I come to present that, if I could take a few minutes recess just to confer with other members across the chamber, just because I don't want to waste anyone's time going over something that's
I'm very
already
happy
put.
to do that for you.
Thank you very much. I'm keen to take a proactive approach, and like I say, a number of the recommendations have already been crossed off. I do have a question that I would just like to ask at this point regarding the asset management, one of the last slides that came forward. Councillor Newport spoke about 85 grand of income per annum for the assets. Has the £230,000 deficit at the Mill Hall already come off of that figure, and therefore 85,000 is the net figure, or is that 85,000 minus 230,000? And again, I'm just going to point out the fact that £230,000, all but pennies, is the amount that we are going to be asking our council taxpayers to increase this budget. 2.95% is all but to the penny the amount that the Mill Hall is a deficit. If we'd have had that operating model earlier, we might not be in that position, and we might not be asking for people at this time to pay more in council tax. Now, I just want to wind up. Normally, I support the increase in council tax. I understand the financial responsibility. I understand why it's necessary. But we are coming into a time of huge uncertainty as a council. We are coming into a period where we don't know that this council is going to exist in a couple of years' time. So I am not comfortable with taking £240,000 out of our residents' pockets to put into our healthy reserves. Previously, we've needed to ensure those reserves stay healthy because we have to have those 5-year plans. We have to consider the deficits. We don't know if we'll be here in 2 years' time, and I'd rather see that money in our residents' pockets for as long as possible, and therefore I cannot support an increase to the council tax precept at this time. I'll leave it there and I'll come back on the amendments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Have I got anybody else that would like to speak? Adrian Eves, Councillor Adrian Eves, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick question. When on the slides that the leader put up, the general fund capital expenditure plans for 5 years, there was no mention on that for the Freight House. But then a couple of slides later, we're looking at 1.5 million possibly being reallocated for that. So I'm a little confused. Where is the general fund, capital fund expenditure, where is that level at? Because it does seem to be somewhat muddled.
Councillor Newport, did you want to come back on that? Thank you, David.
Thank you. So the mentioning the 1.5 million, that is already in the budget allocated to headquarter relocation. The proposal is to not allocate that to the headquarter relocation because of devolution, and to allocate it to a more wider asset strategy, and then potentially subject to agreement in the future, that would be available for other assets, including Freight House, but it's not specifically in the budget currently.
Thank you. So I'm going to move to Councillor Daniel Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. It's quite a question to come after Councillor Eves. Because it seems the HQ relocations seem to be dropped from the budget. We've got at least 3 years of this council, even with devolution local government reform comes about, and we've only got 2 years lease. So are we going to be seeking an extra year's lease? Just don't want us, all of our staff sitting on the roadside with their laptops. So interesting answer to that, please.
Councillor Newport, would you like to respond or?
Yeah, the staff office accommodation comes under the head of paid service. So if the head of paid service could answer that, please.
Thank you, Chair. So with regard to the accommodation, obviously we have got a 2-year lease, and the intention was originally to look to move into the Civic suite. Suite here. We will need to bring a business case about what we do with the future use of here, but obviously be mindful of what the future might look like with Greater Essex and devolution, local government reorganisation. There is obviously opportunity to renegotiate with the Launchpad and Southend if the decision was made to extend that as well. So officers won't be sitting in cars in car parks with a laptop. So just to reassure everybody.
Thank you. And Councillor Mike Steptoe, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You won't be surprised if I talk about the Freight House. I firstly welcome the announcement of the 500k going forward, and I think that's a step in the right direction. I do have some concerns, though. With the amount of money that's been set aside, I think it's 93,000 to reopen the building. That will be to cover things making sure the heating is working, the fire alarm, the electrics are okay, the toilets are working, the lifts are working, etc. What I don't understand is why that only seems to apply to the main hall. Because if the heating is working, the alarm's working, it's going to be working in the rest of the building. So I don't quite understand the logic there. Also, as well, any company coming in to run the hall, the main building, for a short period of time, they're going to have to invest some money into that. For a short period, as a businessman, how would I be looking at that? I would want to see a pretty good return on that. Now, one of the opportunities there is some of the smaller rooms can be let out for some of the things like, I'm going to use the word Zomba. I don't know much about it myself, but I'm told that that's quite a popular item. So I'd like to see some of the smaller rooms being used for that. I'm a little bit disappointed that the question that around Hawkle Parish Council was not read out and answered, because that would have given me some of the answers that I'm about to ask. Is Hawkle Parish Council invested £50,000 into the building, and on the basis, and I believe it's a sort of covenant, I'll use the word covenant or agreement, that they had use of the buildings for their meetings. Now, they haven't been able to do that for some considerable time. Yet I don't think there's been any other arrangements made for them or any compensation left for that. And of course, if they're not opening those other offices, how are we going to look after Hawkle Parish Council in this particular instance? I'd like to move on to open spaces. Yes, going forward with devolution, it is going to be very important that our open spaces and other assets are continued. How will the administration be looking at that? Will they be looking to, say, work with the parishes on some of the parks, to move them over to the parks, over to the parishes? How are they going to safeguard those for future generations? We are well endowed throughout our whole district with an awful lot of open spaces which are very important, not least of Cherry Orchard Park in my ward and other areas. One of the items we mentioned about car parks, which was picked up, I find it a bit of an interesting quandary. It is now actually cheaper in Rochford to use the Rochford Station car park than it is the car park round the Freight House. So I don't quite understand the logic there, Because if you make the price cheaper, you get more people into the car park, spending the money in the car park, so they actually get more money. Perhaps my logic is not quite right, but I just don't understand how that transfers. So I can't support the increase in the fees and charges purely on that alone. And I certainly, as Councillor Belton has already said, the increase in the rates, the council tax itself, I would rather see that left in the money pocket of the residents themselves. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Newport, would you like to come back to him?
I think Fiona Dummel will answer the question that Councillor Steptoe has on the extent of the freight house being reopened. I think I'll just pick up on one point Councillor Steptoe raised, which was about Hawkwell Parish Council. Well, it was the Conservative administration that closed Freight House, so I don't know how they dealt with that closure, because he seems very concerned about it now, but not then. So I'll leave that there, to be honest. We will deal with that issue. As we said earlier, it will go in writing.
Are you calling a point of order?
Yes, sorry, just the members of the public behind can't hear. I've heard them just saying they can't hear what Councillor Newport's saying, so could we ask people just to speak into the microphones for those present? And we know we've had problems at home as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think if we can bend the stick down, that goes for everybody actually, for when it goes on the videos. Thank you. So I've got one other councillor that wants to speak. Is there anyone else that wants to speak at this time? John Mason. Okay, so Councillor Joanne McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. I didn't know whether, if you don't mind my saying, did the officer want to come back and answer the question before I go forward? Thank you.
Hopefully everyone... Can you hear me? No, I can't get any closer. I have to sit across the desk. I was just going to come back on the question around the circa £90,000, just to clarify that money would be just for building compliance only, given that there's been changes in things like fire safety since the building closed. So that isn't to pay for a new heating system. The heating system would be considerably more than that. And that's one of the reasons why we're looking at potentially getting some temporary uses into the hall area, because it also doesn't pay for the refurbishment of the rest of the building, which isn't really in a lettable state. So I just wanted to clarify on that point.
Thank you. Councillor Joanne McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. How many of the members were here last year? I think most of you were at budget setting time, weren't you? Do you remember me standing up then speaking on the Freight House? I complained a little bit because all the investment seemed to be into Rayleigh, and that is at no disrespect to Rayleigh at all. More the fact that I was looking for a fair deal. We have a building in the south of the district called the Freight House, which to my knowledge never ran at a loss either, but was closed. Which administration? Right, pass on that. It was closed. Last year I asked about some investment in it in the south of the district into the Freight House. It fell on deaf ears. This year we've got a task and finish group. The people want it open. Our own survey, the people want it open. Okay, so stop moaning about it being open. We have now got some funds. Okay, it's meanwhile use. The leader and the deputy leader, as for people thinking this is a last minute, oh, let's include it in the budget, I have an email, I can send it to all of you if you'd like, dated the 4th of February, where I said to the leader and the deputy leader, who have promised me on numerous times they're as passionate as I am about getting the Freight House up and running and having some investment into Rochford as well as the rest of the district. I asked them then, I said, 93k is great, but that's just to get it up and running for the meanwhile use. We are going to need a substantial budget. And basically, they went, well, we'll try and work that out. Now, looking at how things have changed recently, with us being forced into the priority zone for the devolution, would you all like us to carry on and invest 1.5 million into relocating our staff when we don't know where they're going to be in 3 years? Or take the frugal, sensible approach, where if we can extend a lease for a couple of years and invest that money into our assets, because, call me cynical, but whoever we merge with, I don't think that they'd be wanting to invest in our area. Do you? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor John Mason, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad I let Councillor McPherson go first, as it were. I've got a fundamental question, because I've heard about £500,000 being allocated to the Freight House, but unless the budget has actually changed since it came to strategy and finance, then it still isn't in the budget. There still isn't 500,000, 93,000 in the budget. So I don't understand why these assertions can be made this evening, these visions put forward, these assurances given without these figures appearing actually with a label in the capital budget. Why? Can somebody explain to me why it is not in there? Why are you holding back? Why isn't it in there tonight? And one of the amendments put forward by the Conservative group was for a modest 93,000. So when we get to that amendment, I might actually go for another amendment for a 500,000. If I'm to believe you, I want to see it in the budget tonight. Tonight. I mean it. And if you can't, I want to see a headline in the Echo saying that we're too timid to actually follow up on what we intend to do. I'd like to ask a question about the EPR. I wish I understood that. I hear £829,000 was very welcome to put into our budget, which must surely have helped it balance. But what is the council actually going to do? Or is it going to sit there as a balancing item, as a reserve, that we're actually not going to do with what we have been given? I've asked the question before and it was taken away and I haven't heard an answer. And the answer was simply, is it tied to removal of packaging? If it is, then we've got to come up with a strategy. And I haven't heard anybody speak about a strategy for spending £829,000, either this year or over the next 5 years. Again, I'd like some answers, please. And, okay, let's look at council tax. Okay, maybe you can help me here. I saw a figure come up on those slides, and it's in the report. Inflation 2% set by the Bank of England. Oh, come on, it's already above 2%. It's going on for 3%. Who knows where it's going to go over the next 12 months? So what impact is that going to have on our budget? I need to know that, to know whether or not that figure being put in at 2.99% is right or wrong. Is it, what is that going to do to our budget? Please, somebody tell me what increased inflation is going to do to our budget. What also is going to happen as interest rates fall? If interest rates fall by, say, 1.5% over this year, what's that going to mean for windfalls? It's all the equations for looking forward. There's no point in looking at a static position, and that's what we're trying to do again. So my whole message is I can see things that should be in the budget, explanations that aren't there, and I want to understand the future. I want to understand what this year is going to look like with changes in windfall interest and inflation, which is going to rise. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. I think I think we should actually adjourn the meeting. Is 5 minutes enough for you, Councillor Belton?
Yes, I think that's fine, Chairman. I'm awaiting an answer to one of my questions because it will potentially help what comes next. The £85,000, is it net of the 230 deficit or included?
Phoebe, are you able to answer that, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The £85,000 is just the commercial income, so it is not net of the deficit that is currently forecast in the base budget for Mill Hall. That is just the income generation from the assets.
Sorry, unfortunately, the members couldn't hear your response there. You need to lean into the microphone.
Sorry.
Thank you.
The £85,000 is the income that is generated, commercial income that's generated from the asset portfolio that doesn't take into account any of the assets that are generating a deficit.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Again, I have to ask that the leader and the deputy leader, if they'd like a recess to finish their meeting before we carry on, can you ask them to do it, please? Thank you.
Councillor Shaw, thank you. So we're going to adjourn the meeting now for 5 minutes so that you can gather up your responses for your amendment that you'd like to put forward. Thank you, members. You had a question around EPR, which I'm going to ask Marcus to respond to. And you also had a couple of questions around interest rates and inflation. And I'm going to ask David Dickinson to reply to that, if I may. Thank you. So, Marcus, if you could do the EPR for us, please.
Yes, good evening, members. EPR is extended producer responsibility. Effectively, it is a tax on the sort of packaging that's used by producers. It's taxed at source for the producer, and then that's divvied out by the government to the various local authorities to assist with their waste collection services. At this moment in time, there is no need for those monies to be allocated to the waste collection service, so it is for us to spend as we see fit as a local authority. That may change in the future. There are still details coming through. Unfortunately, that seems to be the nature of the Simpler Recycling Scheme, that the details of the whole of that scheme seem to keep coming through in dribs and drabs, so we'll have a bit more information. But certainly for the next couple of years, the kind of monies that will be coming through are you'll be able to spend as we see fit as an authority. But there is no, if you like, implications that we need to invest that in any way ourselves as an authority in sort of addressing the kind of packaging issues.
Thank you very much. Can I invite David Dickinson, please, to do the responses to interest rates and inflation, please?
Just following on the EPR, in the budget we've had the full amount for next year, for 25-26, and then it reduces each year by 10%, because there is a lack of knowledge of what will happen in the next few years, but there is an assumption that packaging will reduce, because that's the point of having the tax. So there has been a prudent approach. We could have just had it for the 1 year, but we've included in the budget to support the budget, but it has reduced by 10% each year over the 5 years. On inflation, we have to put inflation on the cost. So 2% has been used, which is the Bank of England rate. It's over a 5-year period, so currently it's slightly above that, but a few months ago it was just below. If it does get quite a bit higher, then that will put a pressure on the budget. That's why on the income side we've not included inflation on some of the grants that we would get, and we've assumed that they would flatline for the period to try and mitigate that. So it's a fine balance between being overly prudent and if we're overly prudent, then that would put pressure on sort of the council tax assumptions even more, and on fees and charges, and being reckless. So there is that bit, and then on interest. So currently, it's a fantastic position to be in, to have about 30 million and getting about 5.5%. That does not happen every year. A few years ago, I think the council earned 30,000 in 1 year on the same amount of money. This year there's 1.3 million. So it does fluctuate a lot. So in the budget we've got, I think it's 700,000 for next year, and then it's reduced over the period down to about 450,000. So again, if interest rates were to drop to 1% or lower, there would be a pressure. If they stay high, then that would be a windfall, and we'd look to put that into reserves or support the budget in future years. But for next year, it's a prudent rate, but we've also put put some investments out a bit longer term to try and lock in that for next year. So that budget for next year should be secure, and then we'll look again at in the next budget.
Thank you very much. Can I now invite Councillor Daniel Belton to move your amendments, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Firstly, I would just like to say it was never the intention for this to come forward as an alternative budget, merely amendments to the budget to enhance what was already there, essentially. So I'd like to start by saying we will withdraw recommendation number 4 on the basis that has already been accepted by the administration in some form, and those changes have been made. So we appreciate that. But we would like to add in an amendment 2.A, which would read, a budget provision of 500,000 be provided for future investment into Freight House at such time that a business case has come forward. The the budget to come from what was the HQ relocation fund. So I'll quickly read through the other items in full. And I would like to say we've listened to what we've heard from the administration, which is why we're using figures that have previously been presented, so that essentially we're asking the administration to put their money where their mouth is and allow them to be in this year's budget as actual line items so we can see that commitment. So item 1, and I understand these are going to be taken separately, hence them being detailed separately. Item 1, that a budget provision of £93,127.50 be provided to allow the required works to be carried out for the meanwhile use as set out by the Freight House Cross-Party Working Group. Number 2, that a budget provision of £11,400 be provided to allow for marketing of the Freight House once the meanwhile use opening has occurred. 2.A, that a budget provision of £500,000 be provided for future investment into Freight House at such time that a business case has come forward. And item 3, that a budget provision of £25,000 be provided to allow for the distribution of anti-spiking aids via the town or parish councils, along with an awareness campaign, details of which can be determined by the Communities Committee. Now, I would just like to add, I don't need to add much on the Freight House because a lot has been said and I'm sure people will come forward with more. But regarding the community safety, now I would just say I recognise that there is a scheme already set up and I've spoken to the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner about this. To date, schemes have been delivered across Essex. Rochford haven't spent a penny of their £25,000 due to resourcing issues with the CSP that is being headed up by our colleagues in Brentwood due to somebody leaving. That campaign is actually around women's safety, not around anti-spiking as a specific item. They are happy to work with us and look at what we can do, and I feel it's right that we put in our own money and our own committee come up with a localised scheme that can include Pub Watch, the Chamber of Trades, our local business, and we can work together to deliver some community safety for our residents. Back in December, December the 1st, I was contacted by 2 families of 2 girls that were the victim of spiking in Raleigh High Street the night before. They were 2 of 5 girls that were admitted to hospital. It's something that sadly is happening. We do have the posters up around town. There is social media work that goes on, but we could do more. And as the chairman alluded to earlier, working with our parishes is a strengthening aid for this district, and I'd like to see that happen via a community safety project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Belton. I understand, Councillor John Mason, you'd like to second this.
Yes, Chairman, happy to second each of the items put forward in the manner put forward.
Would you like to reserve your right, or are you going to speak on this?
I think I will reserve my right on this occasion. I want to hear what other members are going to come forward with in support of it. And if not, then I look forward to speaking.
Thank you very much. So, members, I'm going to open this up for debate. So if you'd like to show your hands, if you would like to speak on this. Councillor Michael Hoy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll come back on some of the points. I think there might be other councillors better qualified to talk on the spiking issue than I would be. I'd like to address the £500,000 first, because obviously Councillor Mason raised that, and it has been raised as an amendment to the amendment.
Councillor Hoy, forgive my interruption, but can you move your microphone down? That's it. Sorry, I do apologise. Thank you.
I'll try my best. Thank you. I'm now troubling to read. The £500,000 is an estimate of the funding requested or required. This is not in as a budget line because it is an estimate and we do not know the figure yet. Until the Task and Finish Group report back to the Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee, we will not know the actual figure needed. Once the Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee have received the report and notice of the required funding, they can then request this as a drawdown from the Asset and Investment Fund. This could be more than £500,000. We do not know at this point in time because the work hasn't been done. So this will allow the flexibility required within our current budget to draw down maybe 700,000, 750,000. We don't know. But this council and this administration is committed to the Freight House. I've stated this time and time again, and I have, through the cultural and visitor economy strategy, through the consultation taking place there, that has been that always at the forefront of what we're doing as an administration. So I hope people recognise that. We have stated this in meetings. It will be minuted from this meeting. It will then be discussed at the Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee, and the actual figure required will be there, and that will then be instructed to draw down from that fund. With the other items on these amendments, I'll talk about the 93,000. This again is an estimate. The task officials have not yet reported to the Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee. As we've all said, we are saying we think we should be putting 100,000, but it could be 140,000. We don't know yet. This has not been reported. So we have committed to it. Again, we've committed verbally in this meeting. We've committed verbally in other meetings. We've committed verbally outside of these. We've been committing in writing through the minutes of this meeting and other meetings as well. So I don't really understand what the requirement for these amendments. They are there already. The work is being done and the money has been promised. And obviously we've accepted the amendment regarding the £25,000 as a marketing fund. That seems a lot more realistic to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillor Lisa Newport, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll address your issue, Amendment 3, about the community safety. Community safety is important to us and our residents. We will continue to deliver projects that will help make people feel safer in the district. We have been very successful in attracting funding to support our community safety priorities, and we will continue to seek opportunities that enhance the service we provide. Our external funding has helped us to deliver our current priority of violence against women and girls. We have £82,000 of external funding that is delivering the Stronger Together and the Women's Charter projects. To support our nighttime economy, we have received £15,700. We are now delivering Best Bar None, which is a scheme to encourage licensed premises to work to provide a safe environment for all patrons. We have also funded the taxi marshalling scheme that has proved successful in previous years, and I am pleased to say it will be in place again this year. We have delivered the successful youth project with Bar and Bus, again from external funding of £20,344, and we have since funded a further youth programme through the Community Safety Partnership to support a project in the Freight House car park. Specifically, through our pub watch meetings, we have supplied anti-spiking lids and covers for each premises. Once we have received feedback from the licensed premises as to the preferred type, we will be purchasing more, which will be funded externally by the PFCC and the Community Safety Partnership. We will be shortly concluding the annual strategic assessment that will confirm our priorities for the coming year, and we will again look to fund the priorities through the Community Safety Partnership and external funding where available. We also have our Community Safety Capital Funds, which has seen 3 town and parish councils awarded grant funding to improve community safety in their locations. We will be considering further projects that contribute to the priorities of the strategic assessment. Therefore, I will not be supporting this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Wotton, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to speak relating to the amendment, and coming to your earlier point, I'll reserve my right to come back when in the main body when we're talking about the budget, when we revert to the budget, just to be absolutely clear. Look, clearly things are changing this evening because instead of headquarters relocation, which I thought was a euphemism basically for citing our offices in this building, we're now talking about a split, which is very welcome. But if I go to page 6.17, there is a very clear table there, very clear table, and it talks about this 1.5 million
being spent in the year 26-27. So I'd like absolute clarity that we're actually talking about the budget year 25-26. Otherwise, what happens is all these reports are produced and then someone says, sorry, it's not in the budget. So I'd like absolute clarity on the amendment that we are talking about the £500,000 being split away from 26-27 to be included in this year's budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor James Newport, please. For David then, David in between time.
Thank you, Mayor. Currently it is in 26-27, so would need to be reallocated to 25-26 in the budget.
Councillor James Newport.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, Madam Chair. So, first of all, I'd just like to address Councillor Belton's amendment regarding the budget provision for marketing of Freight House. Sorry, I didn't actually catch the full amendment, but I'm quite happy to support the amendment. And yes, there isn't a budget set aside for the marketing of the Freight House. I think it would be probably, I'd like to propose that budget is set at 25,000 for marketing of assets, and at least half of that which would be made available for freight. Could we ask the Section 151 officer to confirm how that could be funded? I think, so that would be my first question, but I'd just like to address the community safety budget. And I did hear Councillor Belton refer to the PFCC. But I think Councillor Belton's referring to one pot of money. The chair of community safety communities, along with the director, have actually found other funding sources available. So I don't think we should just hang our hat on the PFCC's funding. As we know, the PFCC's funding is tight. He's had to make drastic budget cuts. So that's why we have actually been looking for other sources and successfully got other funding, as we've heard the extensive community safety schemes that the administration has been able to bring forward. In respect to the 500,000 proposed in a separate budget line, I think we really would be pigeonholing ourselves into that. And I think members should consider, what if it's 600,000 that's needed or 700,000? At the moment, we need to make sure there's a bigger pot of money available until the reports come forward. And at that point, then we will be able to address the actual amount that's needed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
David Dickinson, can you come back to Councillor James Newport's question there, please?
Thank you, Mayor. A little bit complicated, but effectively we would reduce the 1.5 million to 1.475, and then because it's a capital spend, so we would reduce the capital expenditure, and then we would reduce the revenue contribution towards the capital expenditure, which is currently 307. So it would reduce by the 25,000, and that could be an adjustment in the budget. So it would be funded from revenue, but it would result in a 25,000 reduction in the capital budget from the 1.5 million. I can write this down afterwards if it helps.
Thank you. So, Councillor Belton, do you want to remain on the 11,400, or do you want to amend that now?
If I may, I was asked to quantify everything before bringing forward amendments and not just to pluck figures out of the sky on the night, or indeed up front. The 11,400 is the contract amount that we use to market the Mill Hall for events in the main hall and the rest of the building. So we went for a figure that made sense. I think we use a third-party company in Colchester. I don't know how long that contract runs for, and I'm not saying that we would need to use that company, and I actually wrote that in. But it's a specified figure based on multiple bookings that were being achieved by a third party. we're talking about not pigeonholing ourselves, not putting random figures in budgets. I think it's contrary to what's being suggested there by just throwing 25 grand for, I'm not really sure what for. Thank you.
So just to be clear, are you going to stick with the 11,400 then?
Well, I'll be honest, it seems a waste of time to change it. If the administration have got solid grounds and explanations as to where that £25,000 has come from, given they've had this since Friday, I ensured this went out to group leaders early so that there was time to discuss, to consider. I didn't want to do what had been done to us before with amendments just being thrown at us on the evening. I appreciate I've brought an amendment for the £500,000, but that has been lifted direct from the opening speech and a commitment to that. I would add, I'd be happy for that word to add the word minimum in front of it, as we're now talking about 600, 750, another. But I think we're getting into the weeds of it, essentially. This is about a principle and about committing to what is being spoken about. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you. So we're going to remain with what's on our agenda packs here at the moment. Councillor Hoy.
If I could.
Sorry, yes, I do apologise. Unfortunately, you've already spoken, Councillor Hoy.
I'm responding on behalf of the administration. It's something that the leader and the deputy leader share between them in this administration.
I do apologise, but you both have already spoken. Anyone else would like to speak on the amendments, please? Councillor Ian Ward.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm actually going to support these amendments because we've actually put them in. We have seen what there is. We can see the amount that's in the investment reserve. One of the things that has intrigued me this evening is actually on the community safety issue of the 25,000. I was really enlightened to hear the chairman's speech with regard to figures.
Sorry, point of order. There's so many meetings going on, which is we're supposed to have one meeting and still hearing mumbling back here.
Okay. Right, it doesn't help to do interruptions when somebody's actually trying to speak because it makes it amplified, the actual situation. Councillor Ward, would you like to finish your speech?
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully without any further interruptions. I was very intrigued by the chairman of, I think it's Lisa Newport, yes, with all the facts and figures that she came out with. Now, it would have been very helpful, I think. She actually had a hell of a lot in her speech, which has obviously been prepared over the last week or days, and it would have been nice to have actually had that in front of us to actually understand that she was speaking with this amendment in mind, because there are a lot of figures there that I've kind of missed a lot of them. There was a lot in there. But I think the main thing that came across as far as the amendment at 3 was in regard to the spiking. It was very specific as far as that was concerned. And I would like to support that. I really don't understand all the rest of the items that come through, but I feel that that particular item I will support. I also fully support the fact that we've got this 500,000 that is now going to be reallocated to the Freight House. And quite rightly, this is a statement that this administration has said they are prepared to do that. That's literally in the actual slideshow that was put up by the leader. This £500,000 for the Freight House. So I do believe it should be in there, and I absolutely support that fact. We've got a minimum in there, and I know that members of the administration have said, well, it could be 750, it could be more. But rightly, this is a minimum, a commitment to actually putting that there, which we can actually see. And it is a budget. We're looking, it's a budgetary figure that is going in for the Freight House. It's a guarantee that we're doing something. If it needs more from the task and finish, obviously we'll be able to take it from the £1.5 million pot, which again, the members are saying is there to be taken for the assets. So I fully support that minimum, and I think members should fully support this because this is what we're here for. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Julie Gooding, and then I'm going to go over to Councillor John Mason, who reserved his right earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify that the 11,400 amount marketed by Colchester Events for Mill Hall and testing what was required, this is completely different to the type of marketing required for the Freight House, which is a completely different type of venue. That is the reason we are looking at a different figure entirely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Julie Gooding. Councillor John Mason, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to start off by expressing my concerns. And I have great concerns about the progress of devolution and LGR. And I'm concerned to ensure that this council actually puts things in its budget and seeks to protect funding we have available for the benefit of our residents, and things don't progress to the point where a hungry government or a hungry future mayor starts looking at how these funds can be sequestered, we can be stopped from doing what we want to do. Secondly, I am nonplussed why the administration is hedging on this issue. You came out at the very outset of this agenda item and made it quite clear you were committed to putting £500,000 and more into the Freight House. And yet, when it comes to an amendment being put forward to actually put a direct and heading of minimum 500,000, 593 plus marketing, you say, I don't want to put it in there because it could be more. I want to remind people what I said last year about the budget, and I was in a very similar position, having to defend, in that case, the Mill Hall. I'm defending Freight House on this occasion. This is a budget. I've done budgets for a very long time in most commercial settings. A budget is your preparation with the resources you have, what you want to spend them on. And if you put an amount of £500,000 in your budget, it is there for a business case to come and claim it. It's not a guarantee to spend. It's not, it is an estimate. That's exactly what it is. You're putting it in there as an estimate, you're putting it there as an allocation to enable the work to be done to actually get to the specific point at which it can be spent. So I have no apology whatsoever to continuously urge this council to put those monies under the heading of the Freight House, and do it tonight, and do it to support the residents of the district. We won't be able to protect them, we won't be able to represent them for too much longer in the way we wish to do so, and that is very much locally. Let's do it tonight, please members. I'm going to call a recorded vote on that particular amendment. I want residents to see who's backing them and who isn't. I'm sorry. It's not the time for hedging, it's time for committing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Mason. Members, I'm going to go to the vote. We're going to go individually. So I'm going to start with... Sorry. I understand from the Monitoring Office that we don't do a winding up on an amendment. I do apologise. Yeah. So we're going recommendation 1, the Freight House. I won't read it out again. You've all got it before you. So I would like a show of hands, all those in favour, please. I was going to do that when we got to the 2A, actually. Yep. Right, members, we're dealing with recommendation 1, which is the Freight House, that a budget provision of £93,127.50 be provided to allow for the required works to be carried out to allow for meanwhile use, as set out by the Freight House Cross-Party Working Group. £93,127.50 to be funded by reducing the revenue contribution to the investment reserve. Revenue contribution to the investment reserve for 2025-2026 is £307,000 per year. So members, all those in favour, please. Yep. Okay, thank you. On this one, yeah. Oh, God. That's all of them. Everyone.
Councillor Efty.
Councillor Marriott.
Thank you, councillors. All those against, please. Right, members, can you please be quiet whilst we try and do this? And any abstentions, please? So there is 16 votes for, 18 against, 3 abstentions. So that motion is not carried, it's lost. So we're moving on to the second one, which is Freight House, that a budget provision of 11,400 be provided to allow for marketing of Freight House. 11,400 to be funded by reducing the revenue contribution to the investment reserve. Revenue contribution to the investment reserve of 2025/2026 is £307,000 per year. So all those in favour, please. I believe that's unanimous. Recommendation 2A, Paul Birkinshaw will call that out for us.
Councillor Belton will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the recommendation is that a budget provision of 500k for future investment in Freight House when the business case comes forward to be funded from what was the HQ relocation in the published budget.
I think we asked for the word minimum given the feedback around the room. Budget provision of a minimum budget provision of 500,000.
So that's been added in. So all those in favour, please. Yeah, sorry. We're a recorded vote, correct. Yes, please.
Yes, Chairman, I'll happy to take the recorded vote. Chairman, I will read members' names in order, ask them to indicate by turning the microphone on whether they're for, against, or they wish to abstain. I will start by the Chair and Vice Chair, and then I will go through members in alphabetical order. Councillor Page.
Yeah. Against.
Councillor McPherson. Councillor McPherson. She said against. Councillor McPherson. Councillor Belton.
For.
Councillor Booth.
For.
Councillor Brewer.
Against.
Councillor Capon. Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Constable. Councillor Cripps.
Against.
Councillor Cross. Councillor Efty.
For.
Councillor Eves.
For.
Councillor Gooding. Councillor Hoy. Councillor Knight. Councillor Lambourne. Councillor Linden.
Against.
Councillor Marriott.
For.
Councillor E. Mason. Councillor J. Mason. Councillor Milne.
Against.
Councillor Myers. Councillor J. Newport. Councillor L. Newport. Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Sharp. Councillor P. Shaw. Councillor L. Shaw.
For.
Councillor Squires Coleman.
For.
Councillor Stanley.
Against.
Councillor Steptoe.
For.
Councillor Sutton. Councillor Ward.
For.
Councillor Webb.
Abstain.
Councillor Williams. Councillor S. Wilson.
Against.
Councillor Wotton.
For.
So, members, we have 17 for, 19 against, and 1 abstention. So that motion is lost. Moving on to R3, community safety. That a budget provision of £25,000 be provided to allow for the distribution of anti-spiking aids via the town parish councils, along with an awareness campaign, details of which can be determined by the Communities Committee. This could include collaboration with Essex Police, the CP&R partnership and Pubwatch, and could include online messaging, posters and the distribution of recommended aids such as drink cover, scrunchies, etc. This supports both our residents and also the nighttime economy across the district. Parishes could add additional funding if they wanted to provide more in their areas. So members, all those in favour, please.
Chairman, I'd like my vote recorded. Daniel Efty.
Yep. Okay, thank you. And all those against, please. And any abstentions? 1. So we have 16 for, 20 against and 1 abstention. So that motion is lost. And number 4, R4 has been withdrawn. So we're going to now go back to the substantive motion, please. So members, anyone that would like to join in the debate, please? You reserved your right. Yep, Councillor Wotton. So Councillor Wotton, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chair. I refer specifically, and we're now back at the main item, but my point is a very narrow point relating to recommendation 4, item 6, on page 6.2. This particular recommendation is the key budget recommendation which impacts on all of our residents. RDC's share of council tax, an average of £267.66 for a Band D property, an increase of 2.95%, or in cash terms, £7.66. It may not sound very much, but put alongside other household costs of living pressures, including energy costs, water and sewage costs, rising food costs, etc., it is yet another contributory factor to squeezing our residents' living costs. If we look at a few facts within the budget report this evening, 4.3 on page 6.3 sets out various grants. The 7th bullet point, a new extended producer responsibility fund of £829k means £461,000 overall better off than we expected. 6.2, the 3rd bullet point on page 6.5, the luxury of a £307,000 contribution to capital from revenue. Page 6.6, the 1st and 2nd bullet points of 6.5 sets out the intention for council tax to increase by the maximum allowed, plus fees and charges, by at least inflation. So we know the vision for the future of the current administration. They are going to take every penny they can through council tax or fees and charges. And yet, there's an underspend this year of £1.5 million forecast to be. Windfall interest this year of over £1 million and projected next year of just under £1 million. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund brought in £1 million a couple of years ago. A sanctuary payment to the Community Investment Fund brought in £1 million, plus other lesser grant amounts. With no debt and no interest and no loan repayments, historically we are a low-risk council where finances are concerned. Compared with other councils, RDC's finances are an envy of many other councils, from capital receipts of around £5 million over the past few years. That equates to an eye-watering 62.5% if we had to raise that through council tax. Good fortunes and responsible spending in the past have meant we don't even need to talk about revenue budget gaps in the future, as we did a few years ago. The leader, in fairness, has to do what leaders do. He was suitably cautious, but actually quietly I think he must be jumping for joy with the finances in this authority. Each 1% of council tax yields approximately £80,000, so the proposed 2.95% by the administration raises around £240,000. A budget is about making choices. We are fortunate not to be talking about cutting services, unlike many other councils. Choices of where to spend money and choices to look at income streams, one of which is through our residents by raising their council tax contribution. Choices could have been made to save on expenditure. A choice could have been made not to fund capital from revenue given the significant sums which are being proposed to be set aside, including the so-called £1.5 million for headquarters relocation. With local government reform around the corner, that is unlikely to ever happen. With LGR, our reserves will probably be used to bail out other debt-ridden councils within Essex. I understand the persuasive argument to maintain the council tax baseline year on year to save volatility in council tax increases in future years. But with local government reform on the horizon, that argument goes out of the window, as RDC simply won't exist in a couple of years' time. Therefore, an opportunity missed by not giving our residents just a little break from our share of the council tax increase this year. Therefore, in the interests of our residents, I will not be supporting recommendation 4 when it comes to the recorded vote. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wotton. Councillor Hoy, you reserved your right earlier as the seconder for this.
Yeah, I'll come back very briefly. I was going to read out some words already prepared, but I'll just divert from that, I think. I'd just like to start by saying thank you very much to David Dickinson, the finance team and all the officers for the hard work they've put into preparing this budget. And it's not an office budget, it's a budget which reflects what this administration wants to do, and I really want to emphasise that. I will be brief because we've been here a long time and it feels like we've discussed this quite a lot already and in previous committees. I'll mention parking because parking charges have been raised and other charges have been raised. These are set in committees now, they're not set through the full council. Parking has gone up around £24,000. I know Councillor Belton has raised this within the separate committee where this was discussed, where there was a task and finish group to talk about parking charges and where they came up with the solution. The idea is that rather than get into the convolutions that previous Conservative administrations have done over not raising parking charges for very many years and then putting up quite a lot, that we felt it's better for residents that we keep pace with inflation wherever possible on these charges so that they don't get shocks in very large rises, and this is more manageable. Obviously the car parking does go towards the maintenance of the car park, and it goes towards funding the council as well and services which residents require. I'm just going to briefly come back to Councillor Wotton about the council tax increase. This does go to fund capital projects, as he said, but the capital project which it's funding as well is the asset investment fund. Without that, where is the money going to come for the freight house? It's that simple, that there is no other money to come from. So they, in one words, they want to fund the freight house, but then they want to take away the funding for the freight house. It can't work like that. And in relation to...
Can I have a point of clarification? Can I have a point of clarification? Because it really does affect the budget.
Bear with a moment. Councillor Belton, please can you explain your point then, please?
I just want to clarify a point because it affects the voting on the budget. Councillor Hoy has just said that the council tax precept increase is required for the Freight House, but there is not one penny in the budget for 25-26 for the Freight House. So I'm a bit confused as to how we're making that determination.
So on a point of order, if I want to do an explanation, I did not say that at all, Madam Chair.
So, Councillor Hoy, could you just continue, please, with your
Thank you. To clarify for Councillor Belton, who seems to be hard of hearing, I said that the council tax precept goes to fund capital projects, capital funds, which would include the Freight House and the Asset and Investment Fund, which will be funding, as has already been pointed out by David Dickinson. The £1.5 million has already been reduced to £1.475 million because we are taking £25,000 from the £307,000 we'd be putting towards the fund or towards capital. It's very simple. I don't want to go on too long, but I'd also like to point out that funding is required for our assets because of the poor state of repair we inherited in. That's why we're spending or had a budget for over £1 million for the Mill Hall, for instance, because there was work required, desperately needed work required on the Mill Hall. And that's the same for the Freight House. This is because in previous administrations have not spent the money required. It's as though that these assets have been left to deteriorate until they've virtually failed. So we have now inherited that and we are spending money on it, and it means that we have to build up our capital funds, and it means we are required to spend money on these assets to keep them there for the use of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillor James Newport.
Madam Chairman, can I just have a bit of clarification, please, from the officers? Councillor Hoy stated that fees and charges are decided by committees, but surely they have to be confirmed by full council.
Just to say, Chair, there is obviously a recommendation for them to be approved this evening.
So can I invite the leader, Councillor James Newport, to wind up for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's not really a lot to add. I think there's been a good debate about the budget and the whys and wherefores. I think Councillor Hoy makes a very good point. And the point is that we're investing, and we're investing in our services, we're investing in our assets, and we're only doing that for residents. We're not doing it for ourselves. That's why we're presenting this budget tonight. I've had various feedback on this budget, and many residents I've spoken to think it's a fair budget, and I'm pleased to put this budget forward, and I'd like to move to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you
Chairman.
very much.
Sorry, Chairman. Another point of clarification.
No, it's a really good
Councillor
one.
Hoy said £25,000.
Don't talk over me, please.
I'm asking a point of clarification for what
We're
Councillor
going
Hoy
to
said.
the vote.
I want a point of clarification because you feed on my
I
vote.
am going to go for the vote.
I'll just vote against him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, members, I will remind you, as I pointed out at the beginning of this debate, items R1, R2, R3 we will be voting on. R4 we will take a recorded vote for. R5, R6 we will be noting. And R7 and R8 we will be voting on, and these will all be taken separately. Is that okay with everybody? Everyone understands? Thank you. So I'm going to go to R1, that the corporate plan 2024 to 2028 attached to Appendix 1 is endorsed. All those in favour, please. It's not unanimous. Any against, please? And any abstentions? There's one. So that motion's carried. Do you want me to give the numbers? 36 for and 1 abstention. So we're going to R2. That the 2025-26 budget and 2025-30 medium-term financial strategy for both revenue and capital are approved. All those in favour, please. Those against? So we have 21 for, 16 against. Oh, I do apologise. Did I do an abstention? Did I ask if they stayed? They've got their hand up. There's no one left to abstain. Yeah. So we've got 21 for and 16 against, so that motion is carried.
Chairman, I'd like my vote recorded. I was against. Thank you, Daniel Lefty.
So recommendation 3, that the Section 151 officer be authorised to adjust capital project budgets in 2025-2026 after the 2024-2025 accounts are closed and the amounts of slippage and budget carry forward required are confirmed. Members, all those in favour, please. It does, doesn't it? That's unanimous. That is carried. So Mr. Birkinshaw is going to conduct the recorded vote, please.
Yes, Chair, the same procedure if you want to read the recommendation.
I'm going to read the recommendation. R4, that the increase in Rochford District Council tax of £7.66 for a Band D property at 2.95% for 2025-26 is approved by recorded vote.
Thank you, Chair. Again, members asked to indicate whether they are for, against or wish to abstain. Councillor Page?
For.
Councillor McPherson? Councillor Belton?
Against.
Councillor Booth?
Against.
Councillor Brewer?
For.
Councillor Capon? Councillor Carter?
Against.
I think that was on. Councillor Constable?
Against.
Councillor Cripps?
For.
Councillor Cross? Councillor FD?
Against.
Councillor Eves?
Against.
Councillor Gooding?
For.
Councillor Hoy? Councillor Knight?
For.
Councillor Lambourne?
For.
Councillor Linden? Councillor Marriott?
Against.
Councillor E. Mason? Councillor J. Mason? Councillor Milne?
For.
Councillor Myers? Councillor J. Newport? Councillor L. Newport? Councillor O'Leary? Councillor Sharp? Councillor P. Shaw? Councillor L. Shaw?
Against?
Councillor Squires Coleman?
For.
Councillor Stanley?
For.
Councillor Steptoe?
Against.
Councillor Sutton? Councillor Ward?
Against.
Councillor Webb?
For.
Councillor Williams? Councillor S. Wilson?
For.
Councillor Wotton?
Against.
So members, that motion has 22 for, 15 against, so it is carried. So proposal, motion R5, that the proposed council tax requirement for the council's own purposes, excluding parish and town councils and precepts, for 2025-26 is 8.989 million, and it is noted by you all, please. Thank you, members. And R6, that the statement on the robustness of the estimates and reserves at section 14 is also noted, please. Thank you, members. And we're going to go to the vote for R7 to improve the pay policy statement in Appendix 2. All those in favour, please. Remembers that's unanimous and that's carried. And R8 to approve the 2025-26 fees and charges in Appendix 5. All those in favour, please. All those against, please.
Can I have mine noted, please, Madam Chairman?
Yeah, thank you.
My noted as well, please, Chairman. Daniel Lefty against.
Okay. And any abstentions, please? So members, we have 14 against, 2 abstentions, so that motion's carried. Right, moving on. So members, we're moving to item 7, setting the council tax 2025-26. The report begins on page 7.1 of all of your agendas. The relevant regulations also require that this item is subject to a recorded vote. I'm going to invite David Dickinson, the Strategic Director of Finance and S151 Officer, to introduce the report.
No.
And then it's wrong, because you... Yeah, so you've got nothing to add. Brilliant. So I'm going to invite the Leader of the Council to move the recommendations, please. Councillor James Newport.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to move the recommendation R1 on page 7.1, 7.2. Thank you.
And Councillor Hoy, I believe you're the seconder.
Yeah, I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Would you like to reserve your right?
I reserve my right not to speak. I don't think I need to.
Thank you. Thank you. So, members, I'm going to open that up for debate. No, brilliant. So, Councillor James Newport, would you like to wind up, please? Nothing to add. Okay, so you're going to do the recorded vote now. Thank you very much.
Councillor Page?
4.
Councillor McPherson? 4. Councillor Belton?
4.
Going to be
Members, to save time, if there's anyone against or abstaining, could you put your hands up at the moment, please? Is that against or abstaining?
I'm voting against, Chairman. Daniel Lefty.
Abstaining. So everybody else is for, yes? Thank you. So that motion's carried. And we're going to item 8, devolution and local government reorganisation and update. The report begins on page 8.1 of your agendas. As the report was not included in the published agenda, I hereby confirm that the matter shall be considered as urgent due to the need for the Council to receive an update following the announcements and letters dated the 5th of February 2025, as set out in the report, and the short timescales associated with devolution and local government reorganisation. May I invite the Leader of the Council, Councillor James Newport, to introduce this report to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The report before you formally updates full council on devolution and local government reorganisation. Following publication of the government's devolution white paper in December 24, following verbal announcements given at recent full council. Members, I'll just draw your attention to paragraph 3.8 regarding a meeting of Essex leaders and chief execs, which was held on the 14th of February. Members, in that paragraph, it says that I will provide a verbal update following this meeting at full council, and I will circulate the minutes from that meeting to all members if they are happy for me to do so, rather than give a verbal update. There is one small typo in the report, and Mr. Birkinshaw will just clarify that.
Yes, with thanks, Councillor Cripps. Bottom 8.3, page 8.3, paragraph 2.5, the penultimate line should be not added. The decision on a devolution priority programme was not the subject of any decision by Rochford District Council.
Thank you. So I'm going to open that. Yeah, I'm going to ask Councillor Hoy, I believe you want to second this, please. Nothing to add.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you there, Madam Chair.
You're going to second this motion?
It's just for noting.
I know it is, but I've got you down as seconding.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful for the leader for drawing attention to paragraph 3.8, because that leads me to ask and to have an assurance that each and every minute of every Essex leaders and chief executives meeting is copied to all members of the council as we go until the council makes the decision. I want to see this as it flies. I don't want to find out about it in a month's time when it comes forward on the 18th of March. I'd like to follow it closely. Thank you. Can I have that assurance, please, from officers? Can I have that assurance from the leader of the council, please?
Councillor James Newport.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And of course, I will share all minutes of those previous meetings, of the Essex leaders and chief execs meetings as and when they are held.
Anyone else would like to ask a question? Councillor Daniel Belton.
Thank you. I would just like clarification as to when the letter's going to the Secretary of State following last week's motion. I did email on Monday for an update. I haven't had that yet. Thank you.
Councillor James Newport.
Okay, that's not part of this report, so I'm a little confused as to why Councillor Belton's asked that question. But I can give Councillor Belton reassurance that that is with officers to action. So the head of paid service can actually give a date if he can commit to that.
Jonathan Stevenson, do you want to add anything to that, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Belton. So we are drafting the letter, and obviously it was your motion, so we will share it with you before it goes as well. So hopefully by the end of this week or early next week. Obviously we've been a bit tied up with budget meetings, but other than that, you will get a copy of the letter before it goes.
Thank you. Any other members wish to ask a question? No? Okay. So members, is this report noted, please? Thank you very much. So item 9, motions on notice. There were no motions on notice. Item 10, urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. So that concludes our business for this evening, and I'm closing this meeting at 21:59.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Chair of the Council, Councillor Sarah Jane Page, the Vice Chair of the Council, Councillor Joe McPherson, and the Chief Executive, Jonathan Stevenson.